My name is Will Kwan. I'm an artist and a teacher. My family is from Hong Kong, and today I live and work in Toronto on Indigenous lands subjected to the Williams Treaties. Terra Economicus, the title of the exhibition, is a play on the term terra nullius. It is a term that was used in a colonial context for settlers to create a justification for taking over land by claiming that it belonged to no one and that no one existed on that land. In my art practice, I'm interested in a variety of subjects, and I work with different materials depending on the subject matter. I think the thread that links all of my work and interests is perhaps the question of who has access to resources and who doesn't. In other words, I'm interested in power relationships. And I'm interested in that imbalance, and that imbalance as something that existed in the past and also in the present. This installation, Terra Economicus, contains two elements. There's a video projection and an installation of wooden chair parts placed in front of it so that the chairs function as a barrier between the viewer as they walk into the gallery towards the video projection behind it. In the video behind the barrier is found footage taken from the internet from videos made and posted by real estate agents selling cottage properties in Ontario. I've recut the footage from those videos in a way so as to reveal and highlight how they record the landscape to construct a sense of seclusion, but also a sense of possession and ownership. There's a subliminal reference to the group of 7 painters in the installation, in that the chairs are painted with a palette of colors sampled from a very well-known group of 7 painting by Lauren Harris. In my mind, there's a deep relationship between the erasure in a group of 7 painting and the desires and expectations built into cottage settlements. Both encourage us to see the landscape as pristine, empty, and available, free of other people and other histories. Meta consists of 6 backlit photo lightboxes. In 5 of the lightboxes, there are photographic images paired with text. The images are of hands holding this soil-like substance, and they were purchased from stock photo companies. Stock photographs are images that are produced primarily for commercial applications and used by designers or by news outlets. The words beneath the photographs are meant to reference the metadata of the digital images. So when you do an internet search for a picture of a certain subject, embedded in that digital image file are tags of information about the content of what the image is depicting. So the list of words underneath is a reference to the metadata of the photos. Some of the words are actually from the metadata of those images. But I've also inserted a bunch. As the viewer reads, they start to realize that the text seems to possess a voice of its own, not only describing the image, but hinting at a larger set of meanings. So this work, Water is Taught by Thirst, is a neon light that has been made as a functioning neon sign, but stripped of the parts that would allow it to be illuminated. such as the power source, the transformers. So it's a light that is intentionally unlit. Yes, the phrase water is taught by thirst. That's taken from the first line of a poem by Emily Dickinson. It's a line and a thought that's always struck me as incredibly poignant. So for me, this work is about that insight, how deprivation and lack and loss prompt a more genuine understanding of a thing's significance and value. So ultimately, it's a work that's about perspective, about privilege. I'm interested in language and using words and language in my work, and just paying attention to all the types of uses of language. There are rhetorical aspects of communicating with words that is so powerful. So in some cases, I use words in a technical and conceptual way. And in other cases, I try to use words in an evocative or forceful way. The term terroir is used by wine experts or sommeliers to describe the character of a location. For example, its climate, the makeup of the soil, the quality of the water sources, and the way that those elements will influence the flavor, the aroma, and the look of a wine. So I was interested in satirizing this idea, this intense appreciation of the features of a place and transplanting it into a very different context, pairing those two approaches to tease out a blind spot or a disparity. These are 4 prints that form a large landscape image of the Green Lane landfill, where the city of Toronto sends its household waste. The text superimposed on the image were written in consultation with a sommelier who visited Green Lane with me to create a scent profile of the site. So I'm trying in this work to make a juxtaposition between one approach to land, a privileged one that fixates on the local qualities of a place, its climate, its soil, the purity of its water, an approach that's at the core of things like wine connoisseurship and foodie culture that's centered around consumption, and a very different type of land use that, while a precondition for urban environments, creates landscapes not as terroir, but as terror, devastated terrain that's often imposed on those who lack power and voice. So this piece is called Lode. The title refers to a lodestone or a lodestar. A lodestone is a naturally magnetized piece of stone. The installation consists of these containers that I've collected over a number of years. They're objects that you'd probably find in any domestic environment, but particularly, at least in my experience, things you'd find in a Chinese household, likely in a kitchen setting. In each container, there's a plastic flower petal floating in water, cradling a magnetized needle. Viewers will recognize this from childhood as a way to make a simple homemade compass. But the needles here are magnetized to orient themselves to face south instead of north facing. This piece is a very personal, metaphorical work that stems from my experience growing up as part of the Chinese diaspora in Canada, with this sense, especially among the first generation, that home is always elsewhere. The work tries to capture this emotional magnetism of home, this vast and invisible force that is always drawing you as an immigrant in a slightly different direction. This piece, called Mountain Pose, consists of these contour models that you see in the front here. The models are made out of exercise mats, yoga mats. This label describes this mountain range and the hill station. So this model here depicts the mountain range where the hill station known as Simla was situated. Etched onto this plaque here, it says 15 meters. 15 meters is the interval between one layer and another. There's also information about the mountain range that the hill station occupies and the province that the mountain range was located in. If you know your history and your geography, you'll recognize that there are other significant details, such as names that have changed since the end of British occupation, hints that situate the model in time and space, giving the viewer a historical frame to understand what the model is representing. Behind the models are a wall of mirrors sandblasted with a constellation of images. The pictures tell a story about the race relations that play out in the hill stations. The mountain ranges depicted in the contour models are locations where the British, during their colonial occupation, built settlements that functioned as summer capitals, military outposts, and also often as sanitaria where colonists went to recuperate from illnesses. So hill stations had these various functions, all tied to segregation, as a haven for wellness separated from the population, as well as where the colonial government ruled its subjects from a symbolic distance. Colonialism is an intercultural entanglement, and in a very different way, I see yoga, this globally adopted set of practices from India, as another instance of intercultural encounter. So in this work, I'm trying to overlay these two distinct histories to try to tease out certain ideas about what we define as the self and what we mark as the other, and how this plays itself out both historically and in contemporary life. For me, it has a lot to do with the way that cultures encounter each other, when and why we choose to embrace or oppress a cultural other. I think the yoga element has to do with the fact that it's a complex intercultural embrace and misappropriation, and not simply a colonial situation explicitly determined by violent imposition, hierarchy, and cultural supremacy. So the work is trying to unpack these two modes of cultural encounter to understand how the power relationships operate in particular ways.